Before continuing our lesson, let me let me admit your friends first. Yes. So let's revise together what we have discussed yesterday. Before the 16th century, guys, when people have questions about nature or even life in general, they will simply use the traditional way of thinking. By the traditional way of thinking, I mean the ancient scholars' writings or the teachings of the church. So they had only two sources for knowledge, the ancient scholars' writings and the church's teachings. By the ancient scholars' writings, I mean Aristotle, Plato, Ptolemy, and all of the Greeks and even the Roman philosophers. One of the famous examples of the ancient theories was the geocentric one. The geocentric theory says that the Earth is the center of the universe. All the planets and even the sun revolve around the Earth. Okay? Then, after the age of exploration, after explorers have already discovered the new founded land and they found new people, new plants, new animals are not familiar to them, and they had nothing mentioned about them in their sources of knowledge. So they started to think, maybe you are using the wrong way of thinking. Maybe there is a need to invent a new way of thinking in order to get the complete knowledge. So, two philosophers established the new way of thinking, the scientific one, Francis Bacon and Rene Descartes. Both of them had implemented and invented the scientific way of thinking. And they said, everything we know is wrong until proven right. Until we prove it by using the scientific way of thinking to be right, to be a correct one. Okay? As a reminder, again, before we getting into the details, because we have lot of scientists, lot of achievements in this lesson. So before the 16th century, when people have questions about life or nature, they used the traditional way of thinking. What do I mean by the traditional method? I mean two sources of knowledge, teachings of the church and the ancient scholars' writings. By the ancient scholars, philosophers or scientists who came from Rome or Greece. One of the famous examples of the traditional way of thinking was the geocentric theory. They said that the Earth was in the center of the universe. All the other planets are revolving around the Earth. Yes.
Mister, sorry for being late.
No problem. Keep in your mind, guys, that at any given time during the session, you can simply interrupt and ask me. I have no problem. So the geocentric theory was from the ancient or the traditional way of thinking, while the correct one is simply the heliocentric theory. The heliocentric says that the sun is in the center of the universe and the other planets are simply moving around it. So they said the traditional way is wrong after they discovered the new founded land. So they started to use reason. Everything in the world is for a reason. Nothing is haphazardly found in the world. They said, let's use the scientific way of thinking. What is it? What's the scientific way of thinking? Until now, until our modern world, we are still using the scientific way of thinking. Okay? By the scientific way, I mean 5 steps. Identify your problem. Form a hypothesis. Form, try to guess, try to think about a possible solution for your problem. Form a hypothesis. Test it. Perform some experiments to test your possible solution. Record the results. Analyze it to get a conclusion. If you are not satisfied with this conclusion, go back to step number 2. Try to guess another solution. Try to form another hypothesis. And until now, we are still using the scientific way of thinking. So do you think by following the scientific way of thinking, they have reached some achievements? Do you guess so or not? Please do not let me talk to myself a lot. By the end of the year, I'll be mad talking to myself.
Sir,
Okay,
yeah.
let's go on. Their main interest at that time is the outer space, astronomy, okay? The outer space. And until now, until our modern world, with all of the advancements we have already reached in technology and in sciences, simply we just know a little bit of the outer space. Copernicus, okay, after using the scientific way of thinking, he said, he concluded that the geocentric theory, by the geocentric, I mean the Earth is in the center of the universe and the other planets are revolving around it. But he said the geocentric one is wrong. And what's correct for this theory is the heliocentric one. The sun is in the center of the universe, and the other planets are simply moving or revolving around the sun. Okay? Moving in circles. This was his achievement. And keep in your mind that he wasted his life to achieve or to get this conclusion, to get his theory. And of course, after achieving this conclusion, he kept it for himself. Why do you think? Why do you think he didn't publish it? In order,
He
sorry,
worked hard for it, probably.
say it again. I didn't hear you.
I think Mr. He says
Speak
no one
up.
believed. He says no one believed him.
No one will believe him. In fact, this is true. All the scientists, all the new inventions at their very beginning, no one will easily believe them. But this was not the reason. Keep in your mind, guys, the traditional way of thinking, the church and the ancient scholars' writings. So, if you're gonna say your way of thinking is wrong, this gonna mean that you are against the church. Who dares to face the church, to tell the church that you are wrong? Simply no one. Of course, you will be killed to say such a thing. So he was afraid to publish his writings until before his death with a couple of years. He took the challenge and published his theory. Okay? His achievements was the heliocentric theory. And also, if you have the chance to go to visit the science lab, you're gonna see a model of the solar system. And in fact, it's accredited to Copernicus to make the first models of the solar system. And of course, in order to achieve this model, he combined physics, astronomy, and mathematics together in order to get this solar system model. Okay? keep in your mind Copernicus, the heliocentric theory, and the first model of the solar system. After his death, Brahe and Kepler took his work, took his conclusions, and they started to study. They started to study his publishing, okay? And Brahe, this guy, he was the first one to use the term supernova. What's supernova? Maybe in clear nights, you can see a brightening star in the sky. He will move quickly, then he will simply vanish. It's an exploding star, okay? If you are lucky, you're gonna see such a thing in clear skies. This is called supernova, and until now, until our modern world, we are still using this term, supernova, a distant exploding star. And of course, it is said, guys, that what you see with your own eyes on Earth, the dead star or the exploding star, it already exploded time ago. Some time ago, not at the meantime, regardless of this issue. Okay, their achievement, Brahe. Let's have this nonsense. Brahe said, okay, keep in your mind, guys. Brahe said that the sun revolves around the earth. Okay, here is the earth. The sun revolves around the earth, while the other planets revolved around the sun. This was his conclusion. After spending several years of noticing the movements of the planets, he said that the sun revolved around the earth. Sun. This is nonsense.
Your voice, Mr.
لسه صوت حضرتك يا مستر.
Mister, you are muted.
Sorry.
Yeah, we don't hear you.
You can't hear.
مستر يقطع صوتك مرة.
connection يا مستر.
I have a bad connection.
Yes.
So all of you can't hear me?
Now
Can't hear
yes.
me well?
الحين عادي.
So you have been
Okay,
free
maybe.
for about 2 minutes.
Oh, so let me go back with the slideshow, starting from Copernicus or Brahe. Where do you
No.
think?
Brahe. After
Brahe.
he took supernova.
That the sun move around the earth. We stop there.
Okay. So the achievement of Brahe, guys, that he noticed and he said that the sun is revolving around the earth, while the other planets are simply revolving around the sun. Of course, this is nonsense, guys. This is not true. And also, this is Brahe to use the term supernova, and until now we are still using supernova and this strange explanation of the solar system. This guy, Kepler, with the strange mustache, he said, and he was the first one to prove that all the planets, all the planets are moving, orbited the sun in an oval pattern or ellipsis. So before Kepler, all the astronomers said they are moving around the Earth or even the sun on circles. But Kepler was the first one to notice that the planets are revolving around the sun in an oval pattern or ellipsis. And of course, this one is true. but this one is wrong. So until now, Copernicus, Brahe, and Kepler, do you have any questions regarding these three scientists?
Mr.
Copernicus, yes.
How a long time ago they weren't like aware about the size of the sun, right?
No, not yet.
That's why like they compare it to other planets and stuff.
Yes,
Like-
they consider it a planet.
Okay.
They didn't notice that the sun is a star. So the achievement, keep in your mind, guys, the achievement of Copernicus, that he invented the heliocentric theory, the sun is in the center of the universe, and the first model of the solar system. Brahe, he used the term supernova and this strange explanation of the solar system. Kepler, he was the first one to notice the movement of the planets in an oval or ellipsis. Okay. Then comes our famous scientist, Galileo Galilei. Of course, if I ask a student in grade 3, who is Galileo Galilei? He will tell me that he invented.
He was the first.
do-
He was one of the first
Telescope.
people to propose the heliocentric theory.
Telescope يا مستر.
Telescope. Yes, in fact, Galileo, guys, Galileo had a lot of achievements, lot of major contributions in this field. But what's important to us in the astronomical field, sorry,
He was executed, right?
I will tell you what happened to him. Galileo, he was the first one to build the first telescope. Of course, the previous astronomers will simply using some tools, something like a telescope, but not like this one of Galileo. Okay, this one was more advanced. After inventing this telescope, he can see Saturn. Got it? Back at that time in the 16th century, while here on Earth, he can notice Saturn. Okay, because of his telescope. After using the telescope, he observed, okay, Saturn, craters of the moon. What do I mean by craters of the moon, guys? What is it? What's craters of the moon? If you notice a photo of the moon, you're gonna see the surface of this moon will be a little bit bumpy, ups and downs, holes on the surface, not flat, not like Earth. These are called craters of the moon. Why do you think the moon will have this bumpy surface? Ups
Because
and
of
downs.
meteorites.
Sorry?
Because of meteorites.
You can say that in order to make it easier for your friends, because of any floating object in the outer space hits the moon, will make this hole. Got the idea? Any floating object in the outer space can simply hit any planet, any moon, but of course, not the Earth. Do you know why? It's not our lesson, but it's something pops up in my mind. Do you know why? The
It is
floating
gravity.
objects, because of gravity. In fact, because of gravity, so the gravity can pull any floating object in the universe, right?
Yes.
But why do you think the Earth is protected?
I think this is because of Jupiter.
Because of Jupiter?
Yes. Jupiter, it's the gravity of Jupiter attracts almost every meteoroid it gets to Earth.
Keep in your mind, my friends, the Earth will have multiple layers above the Earth, stratosphere, and so on. Do you remember these names? To have multiple layers above the Earth. Do you remember these multiple layers, guys, around the Earth? No problem. I'm sorry to tell you this issue. It's not related to our lesson. I thought it's a piece of information you should know, regardless of this issue.
Very. What's the question again, Mr.?
Why any floating object cannot hit the Earth? Not like the moon.
Because it's outside the gravitational veil.
It's gravity.
Mister, it's outside its gravitational field.
Okay,
الغلاف الجوي
something like that. Okay,
بطلوا هبد.
أوزون
something like that. حبايب قلبي. Around the Earth, we have multiple different layers of different air pressure over there. Okay, try to imagine if you have seen a short movie or a short video about a space shuttle coming from the outer space to enter or to go back to Earth. Okay, if you notice, while moving, while going down or even up from Earth or to Earth, there will be some kind of fire next to the space shuttle. So they designed the space shuttle in order to hold high temperature, because simply anything, any object will enter these different layers of the Earth will be burned. So if any floating object try to hit the Earth, it will be burned. So what actually comes or touches the surface of the Earth will be ashes, burning stones, or something like that. Guys, issue. I thought you should know this difference between the moon and Earth. Why do we have craters on the surface of the moon, and why not we can find such a thing on Earth? I'm sorry for telling you that. It's not our issue. And also he noticed, Galileo Galilei, he noticed, guys, the sunspots. So the achievements of Galileo Galilei after using the telescope, guys, okay? Saturn, he studied Saturn. For them, it's too far from Earth. Until that time, the 16th century, they said that they have only 5 planets in the universe. So he noticed Saturn, craters of the moon, and craters, guys, of the moon is you can say that they are some holes on the surface of the moon. And he noticed the sunspots. The sunspots are something like explosions on the surface of the sun because of the reactions over there. And he said, and he was the first one to say, that the Milky Way, our galaxy, is made of stars. These are the achievements of Galileo Galilei, guys. Okay? Isaac Newton, of course, gravity, the fallen apple. Of course, we know his issue, the fallen apple, after spending some time in a garden. But he went a little bit far than this issue. He said the force that simply attracts the apple or pulls the apple to fall down, it's the same force that's holding the different planets over there in the universe around an object. So the planet is simply revolving or orbiting the sun in an oval pattern is the gravity of the sun. Got his point of view? He's not talking about only gravity on Earth. He went a little bit farther and he said that over there in the universe, there is something called gravity on a large scale. And this force, this gravity, is simply holding the different moons to a single planet, or even holding the planet to a larger object, to the sun. And in order to calculate this force, in order to have an accurate consumption, an accurate calculation about this force, the gravity, he tried to think and he invented a new branch of math, and he called it calculus. Because of this guy, you are studying calculus nowadays.
الله يسامحه.
Why? It's a good branch of math. Okay, guys? So the achievement of Isaac Newton, simply gravity, and he invented calculus. The achievements of Galileo Galilei, he was the first one to observe Saturn, craters of the moon, sunspots. The Milky Way was made of stars. Kepler, he said that the planets are orbiting the sun in an oval or ellipsis. Brahe was using the term supernova. Yes.
Mr. what is calculus? I'm grade 11 and still don't know.
Speak up, I can't hear you.
What is calculus, Mr. I'm grade 11 don't know.
Calculus, by the way, he thought about inventing this new branch of math. He thought about inventing this new branch of math in order to calculate the forces of gravity. What's the force that's holding the different planets in the universe? What's the force that's holding our moon to the earth? Get his point of view. Because of gravity, he thought about inventing this new branch of mathematics. Copernicus, guys, he used his observation to figure out the heliocentric theory, and he made the first model of the solar system. Okay? Do you want to go on? We still have some. Until now, in astronomy, do you have any questions, guys? What I need you to know, regardless of the dates, the achievements of every single human being. Okay, is it clear? Regarding biology, of course, before the 16th century, guys, they used the ancient scholars' writings. One of the ancient scholars' writing was Galen. Galen was the first one to have some kind of drawings about the internal organs, about the human internal organs, okay, to see or to know how the heart, how the liver will be looks like, okay? But unfortunately, his work was wrong. His work was inaccurate because he kept in his mind that the internal organs of the humans and the animals are the same. This was his point of view. So he had some drawings of a dog, for example, of the lung of a dog, and he said the human lung will be the same, like this one. And they were using this source of knowledge for almost 16 centuries until they used the scientific way of thinking. They said, hey, this guy is wrong. Let's start a new way of thinking. And came here Vesalius. Vesalius, this guy, he was a doctor, of course. He was a physician, a doctor. He said, let's have a chance to dissect the human bodies. Okay? So he thought about convincing a judge to give him the chance that after killing criminals, after executing criminals, the judge gave him a permission to dissect their bodies, to cut their bodies open. And he hired professional artists to have accurate drawings about the human internal organs. And in fact, Vesalius made the first encyclopedia about the human organs because of his idea, because he said, after using the scientific way of thinking, maybe Galen's work is wrong. And this was the first encyclopedia about the human's organs. Vesalius achieved this or wrote this encyclopedia. The movement of the blood. Oh my God. The movement of the blood in our bodies, the circulatory system, how the circulatory system is working. In fact, it's accredited to William Harvey after studying and observing the human heart. He figured out and he drew the first model of the circulatory system. Anthony van Leeuwenhoek. Remember this name, Leeuwenhoek. He invented the first microscope. Telescope was Galileo Galilei. Microscope was Leeuwenhoek. And this is how it looks like. Of course, nowadays, we have a lot of enhancement to this tool. The microscope, Leeuwenhoek. Okay. Of course, after using the microscope, Robert Hooke, after examining the human body, he created and invented the term cell. After using the telescope, of course. We have 2 minutes left in our session, and we have the last two scientists in our lesson. That Robert Boyle is the father of modern chemistry because of his achievements in the field. Antoine Laurent Lavoisier. Antoine Laurent Lavoisier. Of course, you can figure out his nationality, right? Antoine Laurent Lavoisier. He recognized and named the element oxygen.
The French.
Of course. And he invented the first, of course. What are you gonna study next year, inshallah, in chemistry is more advanced periodic table. But the first one, thinking about sorting the elements in a specific way, was Lavoisier. He recognized and identified the element oxygen, and he invented the first periodic table. And now I can tell you that we are done with our scientific revolution. Lucky you, no more scientists.
قريبة يعني.
But يعني it's you can consider them as interesting facts for your general knowledge. But please, what's important to me, do not mix them together because you have a lot of names, a lot of achievements. And inshallah, next week, we're gonna revise all the lessons we have already discussed this quarter in order to be ready for the exam after it. Okay, so we're gonna discuss this issue again next week. So,
Mr.
yeah.
The exam is only from the sheet, right?